This fluffy bandit strikes terror in the hearts of every small creature it meets. It's a tireless hunter whose belly is a hunger-fueled bottomless pit and whose domain is constantly expanding. Or is it an adorable magical creature who has charmed the hearts of millions? This cutie has many faces, and they're all masked. This is the raccoon dog.
Hi, I'm Danielle Dufault, and you're watching Animalogic. Today, we're talking about one of the cutest and fluffiest animals I've ever seen. They're also kind of the black sheep of their family, but it's really not their fault.
Raccoon dogs are canids and are distantly related to dogs and wolves, though they're more closely related to foxes. They're the only members of the Nyctectorus genus, but within the genus, their taxonomy is a mess. They're found natively in Japan and continental East Asia. Some scientists believe that the Japanese raccoon dog, also known as Tanuki, is its own species, while others say it's just a subspecies. Others yet again say that only some of the Japanese raccoon dogs are different enough to be considered a separate species.
Of course, that doesn't really matter much to them. All they really care about is food, and who can blame them?
These hungry creepos have the most varied diet of all canids. They pretty much will eat anything, from roots to fish to birds.
They have a more well-balanced diet than me. And as a type 1 diabetic, I do pretty good.
Rodents such as gerbils and voles are commonly taken throughout their range. In swampy areas, they eat turtles and poisonous frogs and protect themselves from the toxins by producing extra saliva to dilute the toxins.
Yep, they drool themselves into being immune to poison.
During the winter, they're able to supplement their diet with carrion and, weirdly, feces. Why's it always gotta be feces?
This very diet might give them a bit of bad breath, but it helps them survive the cold winter months.
Though they have more survival skills than just having a black hole for a mouth, these ninja-like cuties are masters of stealth. Raccoon dogs are nighttime specialists. Despite their abundance, they're most often seen after dusk. This protects the young from diurnal predators such as eagles and humans. Their eyes are well adapted to low-light conditions, and their iconic black markings around their eyes help them reduce glare. This means that they're less likely to be blinded by bright sources of light. It's a tried-and-true technique that even soldiers and athletes use.
And most importantly, it makes them look like furry doggy bandits. Their resemblance to trash pandas is a classic case of convergent evolution. These two nocturnal, omnivorous mammals developed similar traits based on similar habits and needs.
Like raccoons, who survive the frigid North American winters, raccoon dogs have a dense winter fur that protects them from the temperatures as low as -25 degrees Celsius. But unlike their North American lookalikes, raccoon dogs hibernate to survive the lean months. They're the only canids to do so, and like other hibernating animals, they rely on fat reserves to take them through the winter. Raccoon dogs will go into hibernation weighing about 7 kilograms and come out weighing just half of that. Those who don't get fat enough are unlikely to survive the winter in the cold parts of their range, like in Siberia.
So don't be too harsh on them for wanting to eat the world during the warmer months. They need to get as big as a pug by the end of fall. Wait, that's it? They're tiny, but they look much bigger because of their fur.
Of course, they'll only hibernate when they need to, and those in the southern part of their range don't need to hibernate as long. These wintering adaptations have caught the eye of humans, who see in their fur a marketable product. They have been hunted throughout history to make coats and hats. Things took a turn in the early 20th century when Russian trappers brought them to fur farms in the western part of their country to make it easier to get furs without having to import them from thousands of miles away.
This was what we call in the business a pretty bad move. As we all know, these fluffy boys are gluttons and are capable of wiping out native species in just a few years. And that's exactly what happened.
Some of those raccoon doggies escaped their fur farms and started breeding in the wild. Since then, they have become invasive in Western Russia, the Baltic states, Finland, parts of Sweden, and throughout Central and Western Europe.
They've been observed as far south as the French-Spanish border, and the UK considers them a species likely to become invasive in the near future.
Of course, they're only trying to survive, and it's not their fault that they were taken from their native range. But they also pose a huge threat to local bird, amphibian, and reptile populations. Because of this, local governments are actively trying to cull them. But these guys are almost ghosts and are nearly impossible to catch without the help of hunting dogs.
You'd think that since they live in the same areas as bears, tigers, and Amur leopards, that they'd be considered an easy prey. But they're probably too small to be considered worth the hassle. The real bane of their existence is the wolf.
In eastern Russia, over half of all raccoon dogs are killed by wolves. Other canids, such as foxes and feral dogs, often take pups. And for trappers, their success rate increases from 10% to 50% when employing hunting dogs.
It truly is a dog-eat-dog world. Back in Japan, Tanukis have a much better reputation and are the subjects of legends.
In local folklore, Japanese raccoon dogs have been said to possess supernatural powers, such as shape-shifting and the ability to possess people. These superpowers have been used in media, such as Super Mario Bros., where you can get Tanuki powers to fly. The source of their power is thought to be their giant scrotums, which are prominently displayed in Tanuki art.
So it wasn't that Mario was fat, he was just hiding his giant source of power in his pants.
Here at Animalogic, we leave no stone unturned. So we looked into it, and it turns out that the Tanuki's stones aren't nearly as big as the folk art might lead you to believe.
But keep on thriving, you magical creatures. Try not to destroy Europe while doing so.
Underneath these vast grasslands of North America lives the single most important species of its ecosystem. They rule the prairie from the underground, building burrows for other species, fertilizing the land, and barking incessantly at documentary filmmakers. This is the prairie dog. Right now, I'm standing in the middle of a gigantic prairie dog colony in Grasslands National Park, Saskatchewan.
This park is home to a species called the black-tailed prairie dog, which can be found from the prairies of Canada down to the Chihuahua Desert of northern Mexico.
You gotta be careful when you're checking out a prairie dog's hole. That sounds gross. Wow. Despite their name, prairie dogs are not, in fact, dogs, which becomes immediately clear as soon as you see one. They are, in fact, members of the Sciuridae family and are closely related to the chunky marmots, the adorable chipmunks, and the tree rats that destroy my bird feeder every year. But unlike your adorable and slightly terrifying neighborhood squirrels, these cuties live in the ground. It can get pretty hot where they live, so they've evolved a pretty neat trick: become a pancake. This behavior is known as splooting. They'll find a cold patch of ground and spread out their body to radiate their heat into it. It's this summer's coolest trend. There's one right in front of me. A prairie dog. Okay, he just squeaked and sounded the alarm to let his other prairie dog friends know that somebody's here who shouldn't be. Hi. Of course, I mean no harm. All around me, I can hear the calls of the prairie dogs as I walk through their colony, which is actually called a dog town, or as I like to call it, Squeakopolis. These calls are part of a highly complex and nuanced language. Prairie dog vocabulary is more advanced than any other animal language that scientists have been able to decode. But right now, I think they're just telling me to scram. They are literally on every single side of me. And it's interesting because as soon as one raises the alarm, that alarm spreads from one den to the next. You see one pop up from the hole, start screaming, and then other ones start popping up and screaming in tandem with them. And that kind of like travels down like a shockwave of sorts. It's very interesting. Alert calls are a big part of their vocabulary. And while to an untrained ear it all sounds like a dog's chew toy, they can actually get very descriptive. Oh my gosh, this colony is just making a racket. They're communicating among each other to let each other know what they're seeing. And all of those squeaks and chirps have very specific meanings. There are a lot of sounds, that's for sure. The massive colonies are made up of family units called coteries. The families usually consist of one breeding male, several females, as well as their pups. These sister wives will stick together their entire lives, while the males will move on and try to find other females to mate with every year. Typical. The families even have their own language, allowing them to tell kin from stranger. They don't just have cute sounds, they have a multitude of cute sounds. And they all mean something very specific. They've developed pretty much their own language. Despite their massive numbers, they only mate once a year in early winter, and females only enter estrus for a single hour. 1 hour! Once a year! She'll have a litter of 3 to 8 pups, and only half of them will survive their first year. These little families are super tight-knit, though they're not always very good neighbors. The males are super protective about their harem, and won't hesitate to try and bite any trespassers. There is also a theory that family units will call out to alert a predator to start a jump yip, what dogs would call a howl, and then quickly they'll shut up. So when the predator is closer, it's the other families that are making lots of noise and calling attention to themselves. Wherever you find large colonies of animals, you're also bound to find large amounts of their bones. So I just found a little lower jaw. See how deep it is back here? There's a lot of room for muscle attachment. And the more muscle you've got to work that jaw, the stronger your bite force is. I didn't just find a jaw, I also found a skull. Look at this beauty. You see these sharp incisors at the front? Yeah, you don't want to get bit by that. It could do a lot of damage. These incisors will keep on growing their entire lives because they need to keep using them every single day for every little thing. They don't just use them for eating, they also use it for maintenance. They keep their area as tidy as possible so they always have a clear vantage point. If you hadn't already guessed given the setting, black-tailed prairie dogs primarily eat grass. But they are opportunistic and will eat forbs, roots, sagebrush, and cacti, even insects given the chance. So this prairie dog spotted me, sounded an alarm, and then scampered off from that hole to the next one, hoping to lose me. The holes that they pop out of are part of a vast underground network of tunnels. The biggest dog town ever discovered was 64,000 square kilometers, which is just a bit larger than Manhattan. Oh my gosh,
This prairie dog really knows how to pick a home. Right at the exit to his burrow, he's got this incredible view. Look at all that. Oh, I'm just gonna have a romantic sunset with my new friend, the prairie dog.
These mega dog towns can be home to as many as 400 million prairie dogs at a time. But since their tunnel networks are so massive, a lot of other species use them for shelter. You definitely need to be cautious while approaching a prairie dog's den, because you never know what kind of animal might actually spring out of it. As a keystone species of the prairies, the burrows they dig serve as homes for all kinds of prairie dwellers, such as shorthorn lizards, burrowing owls, and swift foxes. These are just a few of the dangers that prairie dogs have to deal with. With such massive colonies, prairie dogs are the #1 source of food for many grassland predators. In fact, prairie dogs support at least 136 other species in the grasslands, which is nice for the 136 other species, but kinda sucks for the prairie dogs. Thanks for taking one for the team, little buddies. Their 2 advantages are that they can call out to alert their compatriots of danger, and they can escape through their massive, winding network of tunnels. It's sunset, and things are getting wild in the dog town. Right now, we're experiencing some of the incredible pressures that prairie dogs experience. There is a coyote out there scanning for its next meal, as well as a burrowing owl. Whew, don't envy these guys right now. Coyotes have been observed teaming up with badgers in order to hunt prairie dogs. Coyotes are built for speed, but they're too big to pursue their prey into tunnels. Badgers, on the other hand, are clunky runners, but built for digging. And so they have formed a mutualistic relationship. The coyote will chase the prairie dogs on land, and when they run into a tunnel, the badger will be waiting inside, having gone in from the other side. Or, if the prairie dog is already underground, the badger will charge in to flush it out, where the coyote will be waiting. These prairie dogs are pretty much the cornerstone of the ecosystem here in Grasslands National Park. They play a role for just about every species out here. Because they are such an important prey species, when their numbers take a hit, it releases a wave through their habitat that has a profoundly negative impact on the species that rely on them to survive. Prairie dog numbers have gone down by 95% since Europeans arrived in North America. Part of this is due to the bubonic plague, brought to North America by rats on ships, which decimated prairie dog populations in the 1800s. Yet the plague still persists today, and when it hits a colony, it will wipe it off the map. The other big impact we've had on them is destroying their habitat to create farmland. Cattle outgraze prairie dogs, and quickly will eat all the food that would otherwise be consumed by the prairie dogs. As grazing competition for cattle and being potentially destructive for crops, many farmers have seen these prairie dogs as pests and have thus eradicated them from many of their natural ranges. As a result of all of this, the black-footed ferret, which is a species of ferret that has evolved to primarily eat prairie dogs, is endangered. They've tragically been extirpated from the park. Sadly, there's just not enough prairie dogs to go around anymore. Here in Grasslands National Park, despite the hundreds of prairie dogs that you see around me, there are still not enough to reintroduce the black-footed ferret into the park. But there are several ongoing conservation programs, and hopefully soon we will see a resurgence of the prairie dogs and the many endangered animals that rely on them. Oh, I heard the squeak, and I see him now. There's a prairie dog straight ahead of me. I'll approach cautiously, see how close we can get. Oh, they're so small and so sweet. They're like fuzzy baked potatoes. Oh, he sees me now. Curious though. This one's small, and
doesn't seem to have the black tip of the tail. I dare say it's actually a ground squirrel.
Black-tailed prairie dogs share the park with the more northerly Richardson's ground squirrel, commonly called the prairie gopher. They can be tough to tell apart from a distance, as they are quite similar looking. But the ground squirrels are about half the size of the prairie dogs, and they lack their characteristic black-tipped tail. The females live in social groups made up of only their female kin. The males, on the other hand, do not socialize with anyone. As a result, they get into some pretty epic confrontations.
Oh my gosh, I can see two tussling over here. I'm gonna try and catch up to them. Ah! Andres, can you see these guys tussling? Oh yeah, they're playing a game of tag or something. It's really bittersweet leaving this place. I'm very happy to see it thriving, but I am sad to leave it. Bye, grasslands. Hope to see you again soon. So what should...
The weaseliest and weirdest dog you've likely never seen. It might look like a bear/wiener dog mix, but it's really a ferocious Amazonian hunter that can take down prey as large as a tapir. This is the bush dog. Bush dogs are one of the weirdest and most elusive dogs in Latin America. It sees everything that other wild dogs do, and it does the opposite. But that converse approach to life is what allows it to thrive across much of the continent. Bush dogs live everywhere, from Costa Rica to the northern tip of Argentina. They seem to thrive in tropical rainforests, but have also been observed in grasslands, swamps, and pretty much anywhere that gives them enough cover and access to water. Okay, so a jungle dog that likes water. What's so strange about that? Well, the bush dog takes that wet dog smell to another level. They're amazing swimmers, in part because of their webbed toes, and their bodies with small legs make them efficient swimmers. They're kind of like the otters of dogs. Bush dogs can chase prey in water, and when hunting in packs, they can even set traps to force their prey to get into the water, where another bush dog is ready for them. This strategy is especially effective against rodents like pacas and capybaras, which often jump into the water to escape ocelot and jaguar attacks. Imagine evading a massive jaguar just to get eaten by a 5-kilo bush dog. But don't let looks fool you. These canids are smaller than beagles, but have been observed hunting tapirs, the largest wild animal in the Amazon. To hunt them, the pack chases the tapir and bites at their legs several times until the tapir is felled by ankle injuries and blood loss. It's death by 1,000 little annoying cuts. Pretty much no animal is safe from these dogs. They, like many other canids, are extremely adaptable and will go for the most abundant prey available. In the Pantanal region of Brazil, 9-banded armadillos make up over 90% of their diet. In the mountain forests of Paraguay, rodents are their favorite meal. And in the Atlantic forest of southern Brazil, where fruit is abundant, they have adapted to eating bananas and papayas almost as much as meat. Unfortunately, we don't know much about them. They prefer areas that are generally inaccessible to humans. They're very fearful of people, and they avoid roads and paths. They rarely ever appear in trap cam pictures. All we know about them is through a few observations, information gathered from native peoples of the region, and from their behavior in captivity.
They were first discovered in the 1860s from fossils. At the time, they were believed to be extinct, and it wasn't until the 20th century that we started to learn a little bit more about them. We know that they live in groups with a dominant mating pair and a few subordinates. They mate year-round and maintain social cohesion through very dog-like behaviors, such as tail wagging, squeaks, and signs of submission. They mark their territories with urine and feces. The smells of these are so pungent that in large parts of their range, they're known as vinegar dogs. Pregnancies last 10 weeks, and babies are born looking oddly similar to the cutest babies in the world, Tasmanian devils. This social behavior helps them hunt in dense forests, where ambush tactics are more effective than straight-line speed. This is in stark contrast with their closest living relative, the maned wolf. Yep, these two handsome fellas are related, one of the largest canids and one of the shortest ones. The maned wolf is a solitary canid from the South American grasslands. They like to hunt alone, growl at others from a distance, and catch small prey that they can hunt with ease by themselves. But the more communally oriented bush dog, which is only about a third of the size of the maned wolf, can catch the largest prey there is in their habitat. So the lone maned wolf got the looks and speed, but the bush dog got the gumption. They got that bush dog spirit in them. So how did these two cousins end up looking so different? Who was their common ancestor? That, we unfortunately just don't know. Animals don't fossilize well in tropical rainforests, and those who do are quickly covered by plant matter that makes it almost impossible to find them afterwards. But DNA analyses have shown that the bush dog is the more basal dog, meaning that their ancestor resembled them more. It was the maned wolf who had a glow-up once it came out of the jungle and into the pampas grassland. Unfortunately, deforestation and fragmentation of the rainforest are taking a toll on the bush dog. These little guys are semi-nomadic, which means they need large swaths of land to catch their prey. But as pockets of their habitat are getting smaller, they're less able to catch the food they need. Their populations have declined by 25% over the past 12 years. And with rainforest deforestation on the rise due to cattle ranching and mining projects, the bush dog is running out of places to hunt and live. Hopefully, as more areas get protected, they'll be able to establish stable populations. So please, support as many rainforest conservation initiatives as you can. It will help the bush dogs, as well as all of the other amazing Amazonian animals. You've probably seen the dire wolves in the news lately, which, by the way, aren't real dire wolves. And you know domestic dogs come from wolves. But that's the last sentence of a 40-million-year story that's so much bigger and stranger than you think. Dogs the size of bears that crushed bones across North America, amazing lineages that didn't make it, and living dogs that act like raccoons, just to name a few. So, we traced the nearly 40 living canid species and their extinct ancestors across 4 continents and multiple lineages to find the one unimpressive little survivor every dog alive descends from, and its journey to become the modern dog. This is the entire history of dogs. Canids have taken over the world. There is a dog for almost every ecosystem. But how did they get there? What makes them so successful? Let's take an evolutionary tour from the first known canid 40 million years ago to the nearly 40 living species today. To keep things simple, we're going to refer to all canid species mentioned in this episode as dogs. The story begins in the prairies of North America, the land of dogs, when an unremarkable creature that looked like a mix between a civet, a raccoon, and a fox cantered into existence. Its name was Prohesperocyon, and even though it didn't look like much,
its descendants would spread all over the world and conquer almost all of Earth's ecosystems. Every canid you've ever met is a direct descendant of this creature. But let's not sell it short. Prohesperocyon had some unique adaptations that were setting it up for success in a changing world. Its ancestors, like Miasis, were semi-arboreal, omnivorous, ferret-like animals. But Prohesperocyon was almost fully terrestrial. Life on land, and especially in the grasslands, required great hearing to spot predators and prey hidden among the bushes and grasses. So they developed the first feature that would basically define what a dog is. Its auditory bullae, the housing of the inner ear, expanded. This extra room helped to develop better hearing hardware, and every dog that has ever lived has it. The other feature that started setting dogs apart from their weaselly grandpas is that their teeth started to become more specialized for shearing meat than for crushing veggies. And yet, even though it was trending this way, you wouldn't think of Prohesperocyon as a dog. It was the size of a rabbit, and it would take millions of years until its descendants were big enough to eat Scooby snacks and hunt ghosts in the Mystery Machine. But soon after, or possibly even simultaneously, the Hesperocyon appeared and exploded all over North America. And I know, confusingly similar names. It was a bit bigger than Prohesperocyon at about 2 kilograms, about the size of a porcupine, and was an absolute ecological sensation. Hesperocyon fossils are the most abundant small predator fossils of its time. During their time, other predators, like Hyenodon, were disappearing in North America due to climate change, and Hesperocyon filled some of those niches. Studies of their coprolites have shown that they ate a lot of early rodents and rabbits. These proto-doggies still walked on the palms of their hands, but their fingers were getting closer and closer together, and their ankle joints stiffer. This made them less dexterous, but also faster. Basically the same reason that your feet are stiffer than your hands, and your toes are more tightly packed than your fingers. This key development eventually led them to become the fast chase hunters we know today, marking the beginning of the dog world as we know it. It was also the start of a lineage called Hesperocyoninae, but more on them later. The early days of dog abundance gave us some strange creatures. Otarocyon, which lived around 30 million years ago, was a tiny dog with gigantic auditory bullae, which made them look like the fennec foxes or bat-eared foxes of today. Their ears were fine-tuned for low-frequency sounds, which helped them find prey in the burrows of the expanding grasslands of their time. A little later, an Hydrocyon would appear, introducing a short snout and bone-cracking molars. It was one of the first hypercarnivorous dogs. At the same time, Archaeocyon was going the opposite direction and becoming more generalist, with a diet similar to a raccoon. It would eat any meat it could get, but could also eat insects and plants if necessary. Meanwhile, Leptocyon, a tiny fox-like dog, was specializing in small prey. They were so small that a member of the genus, Leptocyon delicatus, is the smallest dog we've ever discovered. It was about 400 grams, or about half the size of a chihuahua. But probably the most amazing Hesperocyanine was Osbornodon fricki. It was the size of a wolf, but still didn't have modern dog legs, and still walked on the palms of its feet. It was a meat specialist, and it was one of the first species that you could, at a glance, tell that it was a dog. Still, this species would live up to about 18 million years. But all good things come to an end. This lineage was increasingly becoming more and more hypercarnivorous. This is called the hypercarnivory trap, because even though it makes individuals large and formidable predators, it makes them very vulnerable to changes in the environment and prey availability.
On top of that, they had to compete with a new big dog in town, cats. Saber-toothed cats and other big cats outcompeted dogs in many grass ecosystems. We still see that today in Africa, where we have big cats in the savannah, but no large wolves hunting zebras. If access to the large prey they depend on disappears, so do they. And so they did. Thankfully, not all the dogs had gone the same path, and some of the weirdos we mentioned earlier had started their own lineages. The coolest ones of them were Borophaginae, the bone crushers. These were the descendants of the bone-crushing Archaeocyon. There are over 60 known species, and they had different ecological roles that today would be occupied by coyotes, hyenas, and raccoons. The raccoony side of the family had species like Synarctoides, which had teeth adapted for munching on leaves. It was a dog that was trying to go vegan. Phleocyon had basically raccoon-like teeth, and very likely had the same diet, just eating literally whatever. Look at these teeth. Do they look more like the teeth of a dog, raccoon, or a deer to you? The ones that acted like hyenas were the members of Ailurodontina. These were the dogs that committed to hypercarnivory. The name literally means cat tooth because in many ways, they looked like one. Their snouts were short, their necks were thick, and their molars, well, they were meant to shear meat and crack bones. From the basal tomarctus all the way to Ailurodon, its final form, it was a lineage that was converging into hyena, but made for the grasslands of North America. They were even about the same size as a modern spotted hyena. But the real spectacle came from their cousins, the bone eaters. Paratomarctus and Carpocyon, which appeared about 16 million years ago, were about the size of a coyote and had a relatively generalist diet. But by the time Protepicyon appears, about 1 million years later, they were going full carnivore. Its likely descendant, Epicyon, was the largest canid to ever live. It was the size of a bear and had both teeth to hunt and teeth to crush bones. Even if they shared ecosystems with saber-toothed cats, these kitties could never access the nutritious marrow inside the bone. For bear dogs, this was a free meal, but unfortunately, their lineage wouldn't last much longer. The last surviving species of their kind was Borophagus. It was smaller than an Epicyon, at just about the size of a wolf, but had similarly powerful jaws. They made a living scavenging carrion and opportunistically catching prey, until about 2 million years ago, when the last one of them died. There isn't a single reason, but their hyperspecialization as well as their large bodies likely meant that they too fell into the hypercarnivory trap. Large bodies need a lot of calories, and if there isn't enough meat around and they can't eat anything else, they quickly disappear. So that was it for the bear dogs and their hyena-looking relatives. 40 million years of evolution, all within North America, and they were done. It would have been curtains for dogs in general if a tiny rapscallion hadn't gone the other way and specialized in small prey. That dog was Leptocyon. Remember Leptocyon, the guy half the size of a chihuahua? Yep, their lineage is the last surviving canid group on Earth. All the dogs alive today come from that little stinker. They were, along with the Cormocyon, the first ones to adopt a fully digitigrade posture, meaning that they walked on their tippy toes. This helped elongate their strides and make themselves much faster and efficient. They could move longer distances in search of food, so when one place didn't have good enough cuisine, they could move on to the next and start a new life. And boy, did they do that a lot. One of their descendants, Eusyon, appeared in western North America about 10 million years ago, and soon after, about 2 to 4 million years later, they were the first dogs to leave the continent. They crossed the Bering Strait and took over Eurasia and Africa almost immediately, in evolutionary timescales, of course. By around 5 million years ago, they were confirmed to be in Africa, relatively unchanged, and with the first endemic species, Eusyon khoikhoi. Not bad for a little grub eater. Hakuna Matata. So what did they do once they got all that room to roam? Their new expanded world had a huge variety of habitats, so different species adapted differently to the changes. But broadly speaking, there were three major ways that these dogs diverged. The first one of them is vulpini, or fox-like canids. Foxes first appeared, as far as we know, in Africa, where we have the fossil of Vulpes rifaute. And it didn't take long before they took over the world. In Africa alone, there are 5 living true fox species. The fennec fox and the Ruppel's fox live in the Sahara, with the fennec being better adapted to sandy areas, and the Ruppel's being more of a rocky ground specialist. A little south of them, in the Sahel, lives the pale fox. It thrives in the intermediate zone between desert and grassland. This is possibly the least studied living canid on Earth, due to remoteness of their habitat. And in the southern tip of the continent, the Cape fox hunts in the scrublands and savannas. And in the northern tip of Africa, the red fox, one of the most successful canids of all time, likes life in moist areas. They're also incredibly adaptable and thrive all over the world. You can ding them in every European country and most Asian countries except in Southeast Asia. They're also abundant in North America and have become invasive in Australia. In the north, the Arctic fox is one of the most beautiful and well-adapted hunters in the tundra. The Tibetan fox is another cold weather specialist and hunts pikas in the frigid Tibetan plateau. A bit north of them, the Corsic fox thrives in the semi-arid areas around the Central Asian deserts. Similarly, the Blandford's fox makes itself at home in the semi-arid areas of the Arabian Peninsula, Iran, and Afghanistan. And finally, in North America, the kit fox lives in the arid and semi-arid areas of the American Southwest, and the swift fox patrols the grasslands. That's a lot of foxes. There's even another so-called fox in Africa called the bat-eared fox. It's not really a fox, but a fox-like canid. But who cares? It's adorable. Look at those ears. It uses them to hear termites, which are its only source of food and water. Yep, this is the canid version of an anteater. The last 2 fox-like canids are the Tanukis. These adorable Asian furballs are the closest living canids get to the lifestyle of their raccoon-like ancestors. These guys eat everything. It's kind of a problem in areas where they've become invasive. But okay, enough foxy dogs. Let's move on to the next batch of dogs to make it out of North America, the wolf-like dogs. The most significant of them is the genus Canis. And their most successful member is the gray wolf, which is pretty much the same range as the red fox, being successful in North America and Eurasia. This was the species that was domesticated into the dogs that we know and love today. But this is not their story. If you want to learn more about how that happened, stick around until the end. Also in North America, the coyote is a successful generalist that has adapted to life in cities, while the red wolf and the eastern wolf occupy the forests of eastern North America. In the Old World, the golden jackal is found from Southeast Asia to Eastern Europe. The African wolf can catch anything that moves in northern Africa up to the size of a young gazelle. And in the Ethiopian highlands, the Ethiopian wolf specializes in rodents. Many of these wolves can hybridize with one another, which makes things complicated in hybrid zones. But hey, that's another story. The wolf-like dogs are also usually the most social species. In the tropical forests of Asia, dholes work in groups, and sometimes can even outmuscle wolves for prey. The African painted dogs do the same in the African savannas and have a hunting success rate of up to 90%. In Australia, the dingo, technically a subspecies of domestic dog, hunts in packs of up to 10. And the 2 jackal species in the Lupulella genus, the side-striped and black-backed jackals. The black-backed jackal lives in more open areas of eastern and southern Africa. And the side-striped jackal, which prefers the more wooded areas of Central Africa, is much more widespread, but little is known about it as it's less commonly seen.
These two jackals are the most basal of all the wolf-like dogs, which means that the first ones that crossed the Bering Strait very likely looked like them. Unfortunately, because of their diet, which overlaps a lot with ours, they have been victims of persecution, and some species have gone extinct recently. The Sardinian dhole, a dwarf canid, and the gigantic direwolf both went extinct at the end of the last ice age, around 10,000 years ago. The direwolf fell prey to the hypercarnivory trap, getting too big and dietarily inflexible in a time of climate change and increased competition. Its large prey, camelids like llamas, disappeared from the northern hemisphere, and the direwolf went with it. Oh, and by the way, those direwolves you see in the news aren't real direwolves. They're just genetically modified gray wolves bred to look like Game of Thrones wolves, not like actual direwolves. The Sardinian dhole had been trapped on the islands of Sardinia and Corsica, getting smaller and surviving on small rodents. But once humans got there, the island ecosystem got disrupted, and the Sardinian dhole quickly disappeared. And finally, the one continent we haven't talked about yet, South America. The South American dogs are the weirdest in the world, as they've adapted to the dramatically different ecosystems. My favorite one is the bush dog. You can break down today's dogs into 3 categories: the foxy ones, the wolfy ones, and the South American weirdos. Dogs reached South America about 2.7 million years ago when the Isthmus of Panama was formed. It connected North and South America, creating the Great American Interchange. So who are these weirdos? In the rainforests of northern South America lives the bush dog, a cocktail wiener-shaped dog that thrives around water, often even diving in chase of prey. Its closest living relative is, weirdly, the maned wolf. This deer-looking dog lives in the grasslands and pounces on prey like a fox. But it also eats so much fruit that it has a whole plant named after it, the wolf apple. Back to the rainforest, but closer to the eastern slopes of the Andes, lives the short-eared dog, which in my book is the weirdest looking dog in the world. In more open areas like savannas and floodplains, the crab-eating dog earns its name by eating invertebrates by waterways. But it's so adaptable that it's sometimes seen in urban areas. In the southern part of the continent, the Calpeo fox, the Darwin fox, the Pampas fox, the Secheran fox, the hoary fox, and the South American gray fox rule the Andes and the flatlands of eastern South America, all the way down to Patagonia. And the Falklands wolf was the last canid to go extinct in 1876. It was hunted to extinction because of its fur and to protect sheep. Sad, but a reminder that not all dogs are forever, and they need protection. So that's it, the entire history of dogs. So many species, so many cuties, and so many amazing animals I wish we could have met and pet in person. But thankfully, we still have a lot of species, and many need our help, so let's do all we can to protect them. I'll add some links to some of the canid conservation groups we admire and have worked with in the past. And if you're interested specifically in the history of domestic dogs, click on this video and we'll go through their entire domestication. So what should we talk about next? Please let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for new episodes every week. Thanks for watching, go pet your puppies, and see ya! Work it! Strike a pose! Oh yeah, that's the money shot! Introducing the Fashion Dog! Brought to you by Dog Breeding. This custom-made canine is tailored to all your size, color, and furry preferences. The ultimate accessory just waiting to go viral. You'd never even know this friendly face originated from a wolf. The only catch? Customization can come at a cost. Our fixation with designing dogs is causing health problems, deformities, and behavioral issues for our furry friends. How did we go from this to this? Have people ruined dogs?
With more than 400 recognized breeds worldwide, the domesticated dog is the most physically diverse animal species on Earth. Scientifically known as the Canis lupus familiaris, aka the familiar dog wolf, these pups come in all shapes and sizes.
An average Chihuahua weighs just about 2 kilograms, and the English Mastiff tips the scale at over 40 Chihuahuas, or 85 kilograms. In any other family, this difference would make it obvious that they're not the same species. But in the dog world, they're still so closely related that they could still mate and make perfectly healthy and fertile puppies. Let's just hope that if they do mate, the Mastiff is the mom.
Just imagine if that same size variation occurred in humans.
Even other animals that look more alike than some dogs are classified as different species, like crocodiles and alligators, jaguars and leopards, and crows and ravens.
So how is it possible that dogs are part of a group? The answer is an ability to interbreed in nature and create viable offspring, the definition of what makes something a species.
Even though Chihuahuas and St. Bernards look very different, their genomes are very similar because they have a very recent common ancestor, unlike that alligator and crocodile whose lineage is split over 80 million years ago.
Sorry guys, but we won't be seeing any crocodigator babies anytime soon. But we did get the sturtlefish, a hybrid between a paddlefish and a Russian sturgeon, and they're separated by 184 million years. So I'm saying there's a chance. This ability to mate has led to a fascinating history of dog breeding, one us humans have had a heavy hand in. But first, let's rewind a bit.
While details are a little hairy, we know for sure that dogs are domesticated wolves and the result of a kinship with humans. This ancient relationship between people and descendants of the gray wolf may go back as far as 100,000 years. We don't know for sure why this happened, but we do have two solid theories. The first, known as the human adoption theory, says humans were actively domesticating wolf pups by capturing them from dens and raising them for protection, hunting, and a better chance at survival. These wolves were bred to be docile and loyal, making them very different than their wild counterparts. A second explanation says wolves domesticated themselves by hanging around human camps, scavenging for food. These chow-downs eventually led to friendly wolves surviving better, and passing down a gene that made them less aggressive around people.
Regardless of how breeding started, eventually a strong bond was formed, and voila, the pet dog was born. Signs of this emotional connection between humans and dogs dates back at least 14,000 years.
These are the skeletal remains of the Bon Abercastle dog. This Paleolithic pup was found buried beside a man and woman inside a grave in Germany. It's the oldest known evidence of humans and dogs being buried together, suggesting a deep affection.
This is a clue as to where and when the switch from wild wolves to domestic dogs happened. It's a question that still remains a mystery, but here are other clues.
There's a preserved pup named Dogor, found in Siberian permafrost some 18,000 years ago. But DNA analysis couldn't determine if it was a wolf, a dog, or something in between. And from the same era, we have a canid bone from Erala caves of the Basque country, which was proven to not belong to a wolf, suggesting it was from a dog.
Dogs today still share 99.9% of their DNA with wolves and are considered a subspecies of the gray wolf. So you might be wondering, why do they look so different? Well, because we designed them that way.
By playing with this very small number of genes that control variation in dogs, we can play with their size, shape, temperament, athletic performance, coat color, coat length, coat texture. Just choose the right parents and it's off to the doggy races. Through this process, we've tailored our dogs to do specific jobs to benefit us since ancient times. The Chukchi people bred Siberian Huskies to be strong sled dogs. Romans adapted Mastiffs to act as feisty guards. And Chinese emperors created the very finest pug companions. Even this guy served a purpose, and surprisingly, it wasn't as a mop. This Hungarian Puli was specifically bred for its intelligence and agility as a sheep-herding dog. Their unique corded coats protected them in harsh winters and kept them cool in summers. These dogs were so valuable, shepherds in Hungary would sometimes pay a year's salary to get their hands on their prized pups. With these features, it's easy to see why dogs have been described as Swiss Army knives. They've played invaluable roles as companions, workers, and protectors, helping shape the course of history. But the biggest change in dog breeding started with the Queen. Queen Victoria, that is. During her reign, a pivotal change in dog breeding took place, where dogs went from work animals to luxury items. And her dog collecting had a lot to do with it. This royal loved dogs, and reportedly had over 600 of them of 32 different breeds. This was the Victorian era, the golden age of Britain's influence on the world stage, including dog mom culture. And just like their own outfits, Victorians became obsessed with tailoring dogs to specific colors, coats, and looks. Please, sir, I would like a true English pug. Make sure it is of fawn color, devoid of any smut approaching blackness, and has a coat that is sleek, shining, and soft to touch. This was the dog Victorian explosion, and we have this mating craze to thank for many of the dog breeds we've come to know and love today. But it also meant that dogs became victims of our beauty standards. Some species were bred to have shorter legs, stockier builds, and altered skull shapes. Compare a 1905 Bull Terrier to one today, and it's easy to see the difference. And while this iconic look has made the Bull Terrier a cultural heavyweight, selective breeding has also brought about health problems. One of the major causes of this is inbreeding, which makes sure that certain desired genes are passed on, but also increases the chances that harmful recessive genes are also passed on. In other words, in a healthy population, a dog can have a harmful gene and never even know it. Not that dogs know a lot about genes, but as you breed closely related dogs with the same harmful genes, the likelihood of those genes becoming a problem increases a lot. You would think that the British royalty would have learned something from the Habsburgs. Many dog breeds suffer similar problems. In one study, close to 70% of screened pugs had at least one health disorder. Bred for exaggerated, cute features like flat faces and large eyes, these pooches can suffer from breathing problems caused by shorter snouts. Pugs, along with other trendy dogs like bulldogs, boxers, and shih tzus, are part of a group called brachycephalic breeds. This term stems from Greek roots and translates to short head. Aww, but who couldn't love this guy? These large eyes, round faces, and chubby cheeks trigger a nurturing response in us, called the baby schema effect, and we get a dopamine hit just looking at them. And there you have it, the popularity problem with dogs. We fall in love with their adorable faces, demand for their breed grows, and in a rush to create more of them, irresponsible breeders produce puppies without the right health checks. Two examples of this doggy mania turning dogs into hot commodities were after the release of Disney's 101 Dalmatians in 1961 and its live-action remake in 1996. Earlier Dalmatians were bred to accompany horse carriages. They would bark to clear roads and keep other dogs away. At the time, they were darker and looked less refined. But the movies made people want white Dalmatians with symmetrical spots. And unfortunately, the genes that create those spots are also linked to hearing loss. This makes Dalmatians very prone to deafness. We see breeding problems in places like puppy mills and backyard breeders, who may not know or care how to breed with health in mind. Both can put profit over animal well-being, leading to dirty conditions, overcrowded spaces, and bad genetic matches. This causes a range of problems for dogs, and sometimes snowballs into owners ready to return them. Remember the Dalmatian craze? It also caused a rise in shelter intakes for the breed once the movie hype wore off. There are multiple known examples across different breeds. German Shepherds have hip and elbow issues because of people's preference for a sloped back. Labrador Retrievers have joint problems because their popularity exploded very suddenly, and the use of just a few champion sires made them a very inbred breed. Cavalier King Spaniels are also very inbred, and many have heart issues. 50% of them develop a heart murmur by age 5. Similarly, Dobermans are prone to have a disease that affects the muscles of their hearts. This can lead to heart failure. About 50% of Dobermans will develop this disease during their lifetime. Collies and related breeds are prone to epilepsy and eye problems. Cocker Spaniels are also at risk of vision loss. Bernese dogs and Golden Retrievers have a very high incidence of cancer. About 60% of Golden Retrievers die of this disease. But there is good news. With growing awareness of these issues, countries around the globe are taking action to better regulate poor breeding practices. The UK, Canada, Denmark, the USA, and Australia are just a few of the countries taking action to pass new laws and regulations to stop bad breeding practices. And innovative programs from vets and responsible breeders are being developed to restore the health of our beloved companions. They shift the focus to genes that enhance a dog's vitality from the inside, rather than just their appearance. Meet the Retro Pug. An internet sensation, this dog's brand is all about improving quality of life. Part of a movement to bring back a stronger pug with a longer snout, this little guy benefits from hybrid vigor, with 50% of his genes coming from a Jack Russell Terrier. This pairing expands the Retro Pug's gene pool, reducing the likelihood of inherited diseases from inbred pugs. Looks a bit familiar. This approach could also shed new light on selective breeding in other species that had problematic effects, like breeding cats for white fur and blue eyes, which is linked to deafness, creating sheep with coats so woolly they can't survive without humans shearing them, and designing stocky horses that now ache with joint issues. Breeding is not an exact science, but understanding the trade-offs we make is half the battle. Dogs have helped human health in more ways than we can imagine. Therapy dogs, seeing eye dogs, diabetic service dogs, even bomb-sniffing dogs. And let's not forget our canine best friends. The least we can do is give back by focusing on their well-being. So, what can you do? If you're thinking about getting a dog and you're dead set on a particular breed, please learn as much as you can about it. Take time to meet with breeders to ensure that they're reputable and ask about their medical history so you know what to expect. Or even better, forget about designer dogs and consider adopting a mutt. It might not be as fancy, but it might be healthier and equally deserving of a loving home. Most of all, be ready to love your dog unconditionally. After thousands of years of human-dog partnership, it's a relationship well worth preserving. And now that we know about dogs, check out our episode about how cats domesticated us. We're telling you the entire history of cats. Yes, all of them. From their humble beginnings as civet-like carnivores to the great variety of species of today, it has been a long and windy road. But for millions of years, cats have slowly turned into almost perfect killing machines. So why are there so many cat species? And what happened to the saber-tooth, the American lion, and all the other amazing species that disappeared? Let's find out.
Today, we're talking about all the cats that we know of that have ever lived. It's an incomplete picture because many species lived in places like rainforests, which made it very difficult for their bones to fossilize. But we're going to tell you about everything that we know about the species in the fossil record, and also how they went from looking like stretched civets to the beautiful, majestic creatures that we know and love today. No love lost for civets, by the way.
Our story begins in Europe, around 30 million years ago. The continent was warmer than it is today and was covered in forests. They weren't quite tropical jungles, but more like the humid forests of Appalachia. In the branches of these trees lived Prairie, the oldest cat we know of. This was the Prairie, aka the dawn cat. They were the size of a Maine Coon cat, but were shaped like a civet. They lived part of their lives in trees, but could possibly also hunt on the ground. Prairie was an ambush predator, and likely ate small rodents and rabbits. So some of the key features of cats were already there.
Their teeth are what set them apart from their non-cat ancestors, who had a more generalized diet and whose molars were for chewing plants. Prairie was already going into hypercarnivory. They could only eat meat, which is still how cats are today. But they weren't alone for long.
Other cat species started to show up around 20 million years ago. In Africa, Cadyphelus, Namophelus, and Diamantophelus lived in the woodlands of the southern part of the continent. They still had the longer snout of the cat ancestors. In Europe, Stereophelus was starting to show the modern shape of the cat, with a shorter body than Prairie. Fossils found in Europe show a cat that was becoming more compact, agile, and built for stalking. It had short forelimbs and long hind limbs, which suggest it was good at climbing and probably preferred the forest, such as the Miocene woodlands of Madrid.
We know very little about these cats because there's only a handful of fossils. But what we do know is that they would give rise to the last common ancestor of all modern cats and saber cats.
This was the Pseudailuris. It appeared around 20 million years ago and crossed the Bering Strait into North America about 1 million years later. This was the first cat that you could look at and immediately recognize as a feline. Unlike Prairie civet-like gait, it walked on its toes like modern cats. Their snout was shorter, their canines got bigger, and their molars got even smaller. From this point on, cats wouldn't do any food grinding. Their teeth would specialize to slice flesh.
Cats were also getting pretty big. As Pseudailuris spread throughout the habitats of the Northern Hemisphere, different species showed up. And some of them were as big as cougars. Oh my God, there's a cougar! These were no longer small game hunters.
During their era, the world was cooling and grasslands were spreading. Mammals evolved quickly to the savanna lifestyle by getting larger and faster. Without the cover of the forest, they were always exposed to predators, so they had to be quick or be dead. Early horses, deer, and camelids grazed in these new environments, and the Pseudailuris was one of their predators. Like a puma hunting a vicuna, they would stalk their prey, then have an explosive burst of acceleration, and then would grapple their prey and bring it down.
As these cats spread all over Eurasia and North America, they filled new niches, and new species appeared.
This message is sponsored by Raccoon. With Mother's Day coming up, we're all thinking of a present that makes our moms' lives better. And in my case, I'm going with Raccoon's Essential Open Earbuds, which I use and love.
Here at Animalogic, we sometimes get the chance to travel and see some incredible places. But when you're in an unfamiliar place, it's as important to be aware of your surroundings as it is to keep listening to your favorite music.
Whether you're paying attention to bird songs or listening to announcements when you're commuting, or simply just being aware of people around you, the earbuds give you great sound quality while still letting you hear the sounds around you. They're super light and lock into place, so they're secure when you're doing physical activities like hiking or going to the gym. And you don't have to worry about them running out of battery charge because it lasts up to 36 hours.
I use my Raycons every day when I'm in nature, and I'm pretty sure my mom will enjoy them when she's gardening or going on her walks. They cost about half the price of similar earbuds of the same quality by other brands. But if you go to buyraycon.com/animalogicopen, you'll get an extra 15% off. So buy your loved ones a present they'll love, or get a pair for yourself. Thank you, Raycon, for sponsoring this episode.
Now, back to the entire history of cats.
17 million years ago, North American Pseudailuris gave way to Hyperailurictus.
They were also cougar-like cats and were the first cat genus to be native to North America. They were the size of leopards. At this time, North America was warmer, greener, and filled with forests, open woodlands, and rivers. In these environments, Hyperailurictus were stealthy ambush predators of birds, early deer, and other ungulates.
The Miocene had been warm and heavily forested, but the climate was cooling. Forests were breaking up and grasslands were taking over. The big winners from this change were hoofed grazing animals, whose diversity exploded during this period.
Many of them grew larger. They formed herds in open terrain. And none of these megafauna seemed particularly interested in looking normal. Check out the Calicotheres, the 8-foot-tall herbivores described as a blend between a horse, a gorilla, and a sloth. It was a strange time to be a plant. Animals in colder climates often become larger. Larger bodies are usually better at retaining heat, storing fat, and traveling long distances. This is known as Bergmann's rule. These hefty meals and open landscapes meant predators had to adapt.
As prey got larger, it got harder to wrestle it down like Pseudailuris used to. Some of these cats became so specialized at hunting these large prey that they transformed their heads into daggers and became pro bullfighters. These were the saber-toothed cats.
Instead of refining the short-muzzled, suffocating bite we see in modern lions and pumas, saber-toothed kitties lengthened their upper canines to stab their prey in the throat. One of the oldest known species was Myomachairodus pseudailuroides. As the name suggests, it still looked pretty similar to a Pseudailuris, but the teeth were getting the iconic sabers. It represents an early step in saber-tooth evolution, when ordinary cat-like predators were starting to experiment with longer, blade-like canines.
They look like cat Draculas, but the new adaptation was a huge hit. These kitties definitely match the freak of their megafauna prey. But before we get carried away, I shall pause and acknowledge that saber-tooth is a word that gets thrown around a lot. And to be fair, saber cats weren't even the first ones to try this overachieving canine shtick.
Before the so-called true felid saber-tooths, there were nimravids, which were distant, cat-like carnivores with their own saber teeth. They looked similar, but they weren't true cats. If you zoom out even further, the first animals to ever evolve saber teeth weren't mammals at all. Around 260 million years ago, long before the dinosaurs, Permian synapsids called Gorgonopsians had their own blade-like canines.
This was just a classic case of convergent evolution. Nature just keeps on reinventing the blade. And it works. Until it doesn't. But more on that later. But back to our actual saber-toothed cats, whose teeth were only a part of their perfectly menacing design. Sorry, can't help myself.
Saber cats were a whole anatomical package. A skull built for an extreme gape, enlarged neck muscles, and massive forelimbs for grappling. Their iconic move was to surprise and overpower their prey and then kill it with their sabers. They were basically the living versions of your favorite slasher film villains.
Now, despite this charming description and the reputation, saber cats were not actual bone crushers. They were soft tissue specialists, built for precision, like brain surgeons. It's kind of like why you wouldn't use a chef's knife on bones.
Another early saber cat was Paramachyrotis. Compared to Myomachyrotis, these were larger and slightly more specialized saber-tooths, and had longer, blade-like teeth and could open their mouth even wider. All of that combined to make them better at hunting prey like Hipparion, early horses that could be up to 300 kilograms, or 600 pounds. These cats only weighed about half of that, but thumb-sized daggers were big enough to take the horsies down.
Surprisingly, their teeth were actually quite fragile. They were strong from the downward strike kind of way, but were pretty vulnerable from lateral stress. That meant that they had to control their prey first, or risk snapping a tooth. And here's another surprising fact. Despite their enormous fangs, saber-toothed cats actually had a weaker bite than modern lions. And it makes sense. It takes a lot less force to stab a lime with a knife than to squeeze it dry with your bare hands. Now, imagine the lime is a deer's throat.
In Pokemon terms, the next evolution of the saber-tooth appeared in Africa and Eurasia roughly 12 million years ago. This was Machyrotis, the first truly gigantic saber-tooths. Paramachyrotis was about the size of a leopard. No slouch by any means, but Machyrotis was bigger than a lion. Its teeth were serrated and about the size of a chef's knife. For a while, Machyrotis was the king of cats, and few animals dared to challenge it. Besides possibly bear dogs, but those are a subject for another episode. Meanwhile, in the plains of North America, the Nimravides species hunted camels and three-toed horses. See, I wasn't joking when I said Miocene herbivores were funky looking.
They look like fifth-generation Pokemon when the designers were starting to run out of ideas. Nimravides was interesting because although its head was obviously that of a saber-toothed cat, the rest of its body resembled more of a generalist cat.
Later saber-tooths, like Megantherion, Homotherium, and finally Smilodon, would transition from hind-leg-powered cats to front-leg-powered beasts. Their teeth were precision instruments, but they still needed to jump onto prey and hold on for dear life until they delivered the coup de grace. In some ways, their bodies were slightly more bear-like, with large and thick front limbs. This was a strategy that worked for millions of years, until the large prey they used their forearms to hold on to was killed by climate change and hairless primates.
If you've ever wondered if saber-toothed cats could survive today, the answer is mostly no. But Nimravides would have been one of the most likely candidates to thrive today. By the mid-Miocene, saber-toothed cats expanded widely into a huge range of ecosystems. Gone were the days where they were exclusive savanna giant killers. By this point, not even open forests were safe for large ungulates.
Of course, hunting in the forest required different adaptations than grassland stalking, so two distinct branches appeared, the dirk-tooths and the scimitar-tooths.
I know, it's a lot of knives to memorize, but it'll all make sense once you see how they use them.
In the savannas, where chasing prey is a necessity and being fast is non-negotiable, saber-tooths with serrated teeth ruled. These were the scimitar-tooths. Stabbing at high speeds was dangerous and imprecise, so their teeth became steak knives to slash through flesh. Our old friend Nimravides was an earlier version of this, but Amphimachyrotis was a leap forwards on scimitar tooth technology.
At this point, if you stood in the middle of the savannah, you might have seen an Amphimachyrotis easily take down an upright ape.
And across the world, in geographically isolated areas, new saber-tooths were eating all sorts of new prey. That's because isolation breeds new species.
When oceans fall back, cats walk where water once stood. Water returns. Speciation. I made that fang coup just for you. You're welcome.
The other main branch belonged to the dirk-toothed cats. These cats took the bare body shape to the next level, as they specialized in ambushing prey in more closed environments, like open woodlands. They couldn't sprint as fast as the scimitar-toothed cats, but they were absolutely swole and could pin down prey before delivering bites with their shank-like teeth.
Dirks are stabbing daggers, so it makes sense. You can think of these cats as stabbers and scimitar-toothed cats as slashers. If the scientists who named these cats weren't such nerds, they would have called them shank-tooth and machete-tooth. But that's an argument we can no longer win.
Promeganterion was the main dirk tooth during this period, but it was still an early stage of the dirk tooth evolution. At the same time, in Eurasia, saber cats with smaller teeth that didn't fit in with the dirk tooths or scimitar tooths appeared. In Eurasia, Yoshi and Adelphi lived a more generalist lifestyle. Not much is known about them, and some researchers don't even consider them saber-tooths. But hey, we promised we'd mention all these species.
All we really know about them is that for saber-toothed cats, their teeth were kind of small, but they did thrive for several million years. Around 8 million years ago, a new kind of cat split off from the non-saber-toothed cat lineage. This was Panthera, the lineage that would eventually lead to lions, jaguars, tigers, and leopards.
We know this split happened around 8 million years ago thanks to DNA analysis, but the oldest fossil we have is Panthera blythei from the Himalayas, which lived about 6 million years ago. This cat already had most of the features that all big cats still have today.
Around the same time, the small cat lineage appeared. These tiny hunters specialized in rodents, birds, and other small animals. They also evolved the ability to make their hyoid vibrate. This was the first time that you could officially make a kitty purr.
Not all small cats are small. The cougar is technically part of this branch of the cat family. They actually have their own branch within the small cat branch, along with the improperly named jaguarundi and the fastest cat on Earth, the cheetah. But we have a special guest who loves these cats and is here to tell us all about them. Ladies and gentlemen, Lindsay Nicole.
We don't have fossils of the ancestral species of this lineage, but we know it was a medium-sized cougar-like cat. From that one ancestor, pumas went thick, bulky, built for power. Jaguarundis went freak mode. And a third cat went more towards speed. Yeah, the cheetah. Everything about them is built for speed. Long limbs, a lightweight frame, a spine so flexible it acts like a coiled spring, and massive nasal passages to flood its lungs with oxygen. Semi-retractable claws to grip, a rudder-like tail to maneuver and turn. Every single adaptation points to the same goal, catching the fastest prey on Earth. The earliest member of the group, Animalogic aicha, showed up in Africa and Eurasia looking like something halfway between a cougar and a cheetah, still figuring out the whole thing. But it wasn't long before the giant cheetah appeared, and this creature meant business. Twice the size of any cheetah alive today. It was taking down horses, young bison, and large deer. A sprinter built like a tank. Over time, though, competition with other big cats forced the lineage to specialize. Animalogic pleistocynchus and Animalogic intermedius gradually got smaller, squeezed into the fast prey niche, because it turns out moving a massive body at those speeds is just brutally expensive energy-wise. By around 2 million years ago, the modern cheetah had emerged and spread across the grasslands of Africa and Asia. Weirdly, on the other side of the world, a separate group had split off from cougars and was independently evolving the exact same solution. The North American cheetahs, genus Miracinonyx, were doing their own thing, and their likely prey was the pronghorn. That relationship gave North America some of the fastest predator-prey chases the continent has ever seen, that we know of, hitting speeds up to 100 kilometers per hour, or about 60 miles per hour. The first humans to arrive in North America ran into these cheetahs constantly, competing for the same kills, chasing them off their hunts. But eventually the Ice Age ended, the glaciers pulled back, and the grasslands the cheetahs depended on started shrinking. The last American cheetah made its final hunt somewhere on the Great Plains around 12,000 years ago. Today, there's only one species left, Animalogic jubatus, holding on across Africa and in a small, critically endangered population in Iran. They and their prey, gazelles and impalas, are a living snapshot of one of evolution's most intense arms races. And we should do everything we can to make sure they have a better outcome than their American cousins. Thanks for having me. Back to you.
Lindsay wrote a whole book about the history of life on Earth, but we'll let her tell you about it.
It's called Epic Earth. It tells the story of how life evolved over billions of years. I wanted to show you what the inside looks like because the illustrations are sick. These, then boom. Table of contents, boom. Sick. Boom. Check it out. Boom. Boom. Tons of cool illustrations to go along with all the ways life evolved. We've got specific species, strange specimens, etc. Book to go about how life evolved over billions of years. Check out my book. I'm very proud of it, and it's out now. That's it. Thanks.
You can get it by clicking on the link in the description. Thanks, Lindsay!
The other two species in this lineage could hardly be more different. The puma is a large hunter that can even take down llamas. They're kind of an ersatz big cat, but unlike lions and tigers, they can't roar. But unlike many small cats, they also can't purr. So what fearsome noise do they make? They meow. They're incredibly adaptable and live in diverse habitats from Alaska to Patagonia. The jaguarundi is a long and slender cat that hunts in dense vegetation and is very active during the day. It's kind of a throwback to early cats. You could call them neoclassical cats, as they might be the closest living analog to Proilurus, or a tiny version of the Pseudilurus. Back to the saber-toothed cats. One of the greatest scimitar-toothed genera appeared around 4 million years ago. Its name was Homotherium.
Some scientists describe them as a dog-like cat, which is probably pretty offensive to these cats.
They had long legs and a leaner-built frame compared to the stockier saber-tooths we often think of. This suggests they were probably better suited to covering distance in open terrain. Some researchers have suggested that they hunted in packs.
They spread widely across Eurasia, Africa, and North America and survived until about 12,000 years ago, which means that humans lived in their lands and died in their jaws. We all likely have a great-great-great-great-grandpa who died by the blade of a scimitar-toothed cat.
By the Pliocene, saber-tooths weren't just widespread, they were specialized. Dinofelis, a saber cat that didn't fit in with the dirks or the scimitars, roamed Africa, Eurasia, and North America. Like Homotherium, some fossil sites suggest that Dinofelis might have hunted early hominins. Some hominin skulls show puncture marks where spacing matches dino canines.
Yep, these guys could turn your head into a bowling ball.
Around this time as well, the small cats were radiating. And we don't just mean that they looked gorgeous, because they did, but also that the new branches were splitting off this family tree and creating loads of new species. Many of them are still alive today, but we'll talk about them in depth a little later.
The saber-toothed cat reached its platonic ideal around 2 million years ago. Its name alone could turn the smiles of our ancestors upside down. Its name was Smilodon. If you grew up watching Ice Age, this is Diego. He's my little Smilodon.
There were 3 species. One, Smilodon fatalis, which literally means deadly knife tooth. The others were the Smilodon populator, or knife tooth the destroyer, and Smilodon gracilis, or the slender knife tooth. Real Diego was roughly lion-sized and bear-shaped. They were so weird that some paleontologists have misidentified their fossils as belonging to bears and hyenas. They had a bobtail that indicated it didn't chase like a lion, but rather ambushed its weird-looking prey. Sorry I keep roasting them, but come on, just look at this guy. Here's the rundown. Forelimbs like a heavyweight grappler, massive chest, stout back legs, and neck muscles much bigger than a modern cat's. Their thumbs sported grappling hooks, and their canines reached nearly 30 centimeters. That's longer than an average human foot. Imagine 2 of your feet growing from your gums. Ew. Smilodon populator had the longest fangs of any saber-tooth ever. Imagine encountering that as a human trying to make it in the open pampas of Ice Age South America. And here's another surprise. Those iconic fangs were likely covered by fleshy lips when their mouth was closed. So it probably didn't walk around permanently mid-snarl.
There's something cool about having the longest blades ever and keeping them tucked away like you've got nothing to prove.
Saber-tooth kittens were born with small milk canines. Their famous blades took years to fully erupt. For a while, they had unique double fangs, baby teeth that sat beside developing, fragile adult sabers.
I can't decide if I would have been more or less cool in my awkward teenage years if I had double fangs. In adulthood, they could open their mouths an amazing 120 degrees. For reference, a lion can only open their mouths at about 65 degrees. Hey, listen, I'm not saying that's not impressive. Pretty amazing. I ain't lying. Get it?
At the La Brea tar pits in California, paleontologists have dug up thousands of Smilodon fossils. Many show healed, broken bones that would likely have been fatal for a solitary predator. Yet they healed, which suggests possible cooperative behavior, maybe social groups. La Brea tar pits tells a brutal story. Struggling megafauna trapped in asphalt drew in predators again and again, who then became trapped themselves. A prehistoric domino effect. Smilodon is one of the most common large carnivores found there.
The golden age of saber-tooths and big cats started around 1 million years ago.
In North America, Smilodon fatalis was the apex predator of the forest. In the prairies, the American lion, one of the largest lions ever, preyed on bison. And in some southern forests, the American jaguar pounced on its prey with incredible strength. In South America, Smilodon populator, possibly the largest saber-tooth ever, stalked the woodlands, and Homotherium cerums, a massive scimitar tooth, thrived patrolling the plains. In the south, humongous Patagonian panthers, another jaguar species, were well adapted to the rocky terrain of the southern Andes. Their prey included giants like the ground sloths. In Eurasia, the incorrectly named cave lion was one of the apex predators of mammoth steppes and made their living hunting reindeer and other large ungulates. In the forests, the European jaguar made a killing under the evergreen trees of the continent. And in between, in rocky crops or forest edges, the European leopard hunted with its iconic climbing and dive-bombing ability.
This terrifyingly awesome age of big cats came to an abrupt end because the world changed again. The ecosystems that helped them thrive were disappearing, and competition with the greatest predator was not survivable.
Saber-tooths had survived climate swings before. They had crossed continents, adapted to new prey, outlasted competitors. But around 12,000 years ago, change accelerated. Subtle shifts in Earth's orbit increased northern sunlight, pushing the planet out of its last ice age. Glaciers retreated rapidly, and vegetation patterns shifted.
Humans spread widely and were very effective hunters. Yes, the same humans like you and me who survive on delivery and YouTube videos.
Large megafauna like mammoths and giant ground sloths declined quickly. Saber-tooths were specialists. Their anatomy was tuned for large-bodied prey. When that prey vanished, the blade didn't have much left to cut. And they weren't alone. The European cave lion, the American lion, the American cheetah, not true cheetahs, but fast-running relatives, they all disappeared. That's part of why the pronghorn is still absurdly fast today. It evolved to outrun a predator that no longer exists, like they're still running from evolutionary ghosts. But saber-toothed cats have no real descendants or relatives surviving today. This is a phenomenon known as macroevolution ratchet. Lineages tend to push towards increasing specialization, which has advantages in stable environments, but become a liability when ecosystems shift rapidly.
We're not saying that they failed because their teeth were flawed. They were around for 20 million years. That's 10 times longer than the genus Homo has existed.
And with that, one of the most iconic predator designs in mammalian history vanished. For the first time in millions and millions of years, no saber-toothed cat roamed the earth. The closest thing we have today are the oversized canines of clouded leopards and the strange saber-like teeth of musk deer.
But no creature in history has carried the saber-tooth the way that Smilodon did. Sometimes that's just the way the catnip crumbles. Today, we have over 40 living species in just 12 genera. Let's see who they are and how they adapted to survive. First, the big cats.
The largest of the big cats is the true king of the jungle, the tiger, with some individuals reaching 300 kilograms or about 600 pounds. These are still monumental beasts. Their stripes hide them in the jungles while they ambush their prey. But their numbers are the opposite of that. In 2010, there were as few as 3,000 tigers in the whole world. That means you'd need 7 times the global population to fill out a hockey arena. Thankfully, the numbers have recovered thanks to amazing conservation work by groups like Panthera. So we asked our friend Dr. Wai Ming to tell us about saving this amazing cat.
My name is Wai Ming Wong. I am the director of Panthera's Small Cat Conservation Science. So I think overall we're doing quite well in tiger conservation. Numbers are up. I remember growing up as a kid, the numbers kind of always were around the 3,000 mark, and now they're kind of up to kind of the 4,200 mark, which is really fantastic. That's a fairly significant increase in global tiger populations. A lot of that increase has been on the Indian subcontinent, where there has been significant conservation initiatives aimed at tigers.
A 33% increase in population is massive, but the work continues.
There are still a lot of challenges within tiger conservation, right? Habitat fragmentation, degradation, prey depletion, as well as poaching of tigers and their prey, as well as agricultural expansion and infrastructure expansion, and maintaining political will over very large landscapes. In some places, trafficking remains a major threat, and another is the issue is whether tiger habitat stays connected enough for populations to kind of remain viable. And as populations recover in some landscapes, conflict with people can also increase if it isn't proactively managed. But the encouraging part is that we know tiger recovery is possible.
These learnings will help us protect the other big cats. The most iconic of them is probably the lion. Being a social cat is actually pretty unique. This helps them catch large prey despite not being as huge as saber-tooths. Pride or die, baby! Leopards overlap with lions and specialize in prey that might be too small for lions to chase. When they do catch something, they have to eat it quickly or risk having its food stolen by lions, hyenas, and painted dogs. So they have learned to climb up a tree and have their meals while taking in the view. In the Americas, the jaguar occupies a similar niche to leopards. Some of their common prey are caimans and other aquatic animals, so they have to kill them quickly. To do that, they have evolved the strongest bite relative to size of all big cats, and have learned to crush its prey's skull for a quick kill. And in the mountains of Asia, snow leopards, with their rock-climbing skills and leaping prowess, have become specialists at eating other rock climbers, like sheep and ibex. There are also 2 kind of honorary big cats, the clouded leopard and the Sunda clouded leopard. These 2 species, similar but separated by geography, can't roar like big cats, but can't purr either. Their skulls are more saber-toothy than any other living cat, and they climb so well that they can even walk down a tree head down. Any small or medium-sized arboreal animal in Southeast Asia is afraid of these guys.
Big cats are probably the most well-known felines, aside from the house cat. But the small cat world is fascinating and a lot more diverse. Let's see how these tiny cats took over the world and my heart.
One of the first lineages to split off is possibly the most mysterious of all the small cat clans, the Bay Cat lineage. If you've never heard of Bay Cats or their cousins, the Asian golden cat and the marbled cat, you're not alone. Very few people have heard of them, and even fewer have seen them. They're Southeast Asian cats. Marbled cats live in trees, and they're found from Nepal to Borneo. They're amazing climbers and have long tails for balance. They're kinda like squirrel cats. Bay cats and Asian golden cats are more generalist forest floor cats. They were once a single species, but they diverged when the land bridge between Borneo and continental Asia disappeared. Now, bay cats are endemic to Borneo, and golden cats have a wide but patchy distribution in the rest of Southeast Asia and China. Also in Asia, but with much smaller species, we have the Prairie genus. The most common of them is the outrageously adorable leopard cat. They're generalists and are slightly tinier than a domestic cat. You can find them across Asia, from Afghanistan and India to North Korea and Malaysia. Then we get the weirdos. The fishing cat lives exclusively in wetlands and actively jumps in the water to catch prey. They're officially the wettest cat in the world. Then we have the flat-headed cat, from lowland forests near wetlands. These cats also fish, but instead of diving to hunt, they catch prey from the shore, like shorebirds. And finally, we have the rusty spotted cat, one of the smallest cats in the world and a specialist in the dry forest habitats of India and Sri Lanka. The closest relative to this genus is the Pallas cat from the rocky grasslands of Asia. This cat is the OG grumpy cat. It has some of the classic cold weather features, like a small tail and ears, because in the tundra, everything devolves to orb. And it also has round pupils, which gives them that iconic hyper-expressive look, like they're always slightly disappointed in you. Meanwhile, in Africa, the small cats were diversifying as well. The most statuesque of these new lineages was the caracal branch of the family. These cats have long legs and an elegant, borderline pretentious gait. I know I'm anthropomorphizing these cats, but they look kinda rich? I don't know. Anyways, I digress. Caracals are good jumpers and can even catch birds out of the air. Servals are even better and have a fox-like hunting technique where they pounce on rodents and other small prey. It's a useful technique in the tall grasslands where prey are hard to find and harder to follow. And finally, the golden cat is a more generalist cat. They had left the savanna and adapted to life in the jungle. Because of this, we know very little about it. But look at it! It's absolutely stunning. Meanwhile, in South America, with its wide variety of habitats, small cats were exploding. The genus Leopardus went wild and made hunters for every small prey. The largest of them is the ocelot, a mid-sized rainforest species that hunts mostly on the ground. If you're a small mammal running away from an ocelot, you might think that going up into a tree would be a way to save yourself. But unfortunately, in the canopy, the margay, the most arboreal of the South American cats, would be waiting to snatch you up. They're known to eat birds and monkeys. In areas without ocelots, the oncillas rule. They're basically pocket ocelots that can live in areas with less tree cover, like mountain forests, that can support smaller prey species. A subspecies of Oncilla, the southern tigrina, has recently been proven to be a separate species and lives in the forests of southern Brazil and the Pantanal. In the colder rainforests of Chile, codcods appeared. They're small and have a thick coat that protects them from the cool temperatures of the southern part of the continent. In the less covered areas, multiple cats compete for the available prey. The Jeffries cat is the most flexible of them and thrives in open lands and the river forests in the grasslands. The Pampas cat is more of a grassland specialist and uses the cover of tall grass to sneak up on prey and pounce when they least expect it. And lastly, the Andean cat, using similar techniques as its grassland-dwelling cousin, takes up to the rocky hilltops of the Andes to catch viscachas. This is one of the most specialized cat species on Earth and lives in environments few predators could survive in. Using a similar pouncing style, but better adapted to colder weather, is the lynx lineage. Their long legs and wide pads are adaptations for walking in rough terrain, like snowshoes. Their tiny tail prevents heat loss, and their large ears give them directional hearing. The Canada lynx is the most specialized of them. Its coat and clown-like feet help them traverse the snow and catch snowshoe hares. Across the pond, the Eurasian lynx makes up for its lack of extreme cold adaptations by being a bit bigger and adapting to boreal forests. The Iberian lynx is the Mediterranean version of the Eurasian lynx, and it is adapted to life in warmer weather, catching European rabbits with great skill anywhere they go. In North America, the bobcat is the most generalist of lynxes. It lives in pretty much any ecosystem in the continent except tundras. If you're watching this from North America, you're likely not too far from a bobcat. And finally, the wildcat lineage. These are super adaptable small cats that can live in huge swaths of the earth. In Asia and some parts of Africa, the jungle cat is a specialist in wetlands and tall grass. In southern Africa, the black-footed cat hunts under the cover of darkness and is the most ruthlessly efficient cat in the world, often catching over 10 different prey in a single night. Up in the Tibetan Plateau, the Chinese mountain cat specializes in cooler weather living and pika hunting. In the areas of the Sahara and other deserts, the sand cat survives by requiring very little water, being the color of sand, and having fur on its paws to protect them from the scorching temperatures. And finally, the European wildcat and the African wildcat are closely related and can be found across the forests, scrubs, and grasslands of the two continents as well as most of Asia. African cats were the ones who got domesticated to give rise to our beloved domestic cats. But unlike domestic cats, many small cats live in very specific ecosystems, and their numbers have been affected by human activity. Dr. Wong has some insight on the work being done to save them.
That's a great question. There's been huge progress over the past 10 to 20 years, but within wildcat conservation, it's still very much uneven. Many years ago, a colleague of mine, a guy called Jim Sanderson, anyone in small cat conservation knows of Jim Sanderson. He's a small cat champion. He did a very famous but very simple calculation, and he looked at all of the available funding that goes into wildcat conservation. And he calculated that less than 1% of all available funding went to the 33 small wildcats.
And the main reason for this is that many people simply don't know enough about small cats to care about them. But one thing I can assure you, to know them is to love them.
One of the points that I want to emphasize with small cats is that they're just really cool, right? They have really cool adaptations, as we discussed. Many have habitat specialists. They live in these wetlands or dense rainforests, and so with that there's been some adaptations, right? We have The arboreal specialists, margays, cloud leopards, marble cats, they have all these kind of adaptations with rotating wrists that allow them to run down trees head first, hang upside down on branches, some really cool stuff. The black-footed cat, for example, in South Africa, the smallest cat in Africa, but perhaps the most deadliest. It has a 70% kill rate, very, very successful. I want to emphasize and illustrate that many of these small cats are just as charismatic as the big ones, but also very ecologically important. Kind of bringing it back to the point where it's really important to kind of look at this that middle approach, those small cats, the medium-sized carnivores, as global indicators of change, particularly in a rapidly changing world with degrading environments and that sort of stuff. The small cats will certainly kind of provide us with a really good indicator of how things are doing in the future. So a super important group of species to be studying.
I couldn't agree more. Let's all continue learning about these amazing cats and get more involved in their conservation. And if you can, support organizations like Panthera, who are trying tirelessly to protect all living cats.
So there it is, all the cats that you didn't know and a lot more. What's your favorite cat that you didn't know about?
If you liked learning about cats, check out our episode about the evolution of the domestic cat, where we go in depth into the adaptations that made the internet's favorite animal.
So what should we talk about? Please let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for new episodes every week. Thanks for watching, please go pet your kitty, and I'll see you next time. Meow. I almost just died.
This fluffy bandit strikes terror in the hearts of every small creature it meets. It's a tireless hunter whose belly is a hunger-fueled bottomless pit and whose domain is constantly expanding. Or is it an adorable magical creature who has charmed the hearts of millions? This cutie has many faces, and they're all masked. This is the raccoon dog.
Hi, I'm Danielle Dufault, and you're watching Animalogic. Today, we're talking about one of the cutest and fluffiest animals I've ever seen. They're also kind of the black sheep of their family, but it's really not their fault.
Raccoon dogs are canids and are distantly related to dogs and wolves, though they're more closely related to foxes. They're the only members of the Nyctectorus genus, but within the genus, their taxonomy is a mess. They're found natively in Japan and continental East Asia,